Oh, wowee, wowee. It's all kicking off now, and when it kicks off, I always need a little bit of support, so I've called on me old bestie, Benedict Spence, to wade in on what is going on with Reform UK. Benedict Spence, great to have you on the programme. Zia Yusuf resigned. He said that I no longer believe that it's worth my time and energy trying to get Reform elected as the next government. I mean, that doesn't really sound like it's a happy departure. Nigel saying lovely words about him, how talented he was, and he's a loss to public life. I have a feeling there might be a few sort of, real ales being poured right now in Reformville.
Do you know what? It's tricky because I think the fact that Nigel Farage has been very complimentary, actually, about Zia Yusuf is a sign that this is not like the Rupert Lowe situation or indeed the Ben Habib situation, where there is bad blood in a sense that they might, in fact, have been detrimental to the party or the leadership. I think there is an understanding that on some level, Zia Yusuf has been very good in terms of bringing in a different kind of support for reform that perhaps it wasn't able to do beforehand, in terms of trying to professionalise the party, opening up new branches, putting in place sort of grassroots systems, this whole sort of approach to UK Doge sort of thing that isn't just a gimmick but is in fact something more tangible. I think Zia Yusuf is an intelligent individual and a potentially very savvy operator. I think, though, it's also true that his vision for the party is not necessarily the same, or was never the same, as a lot of, I wouldn't even say senior members of the party, I'd say a lot of grassroots members of the party don't necessarily see the future that Zia Yusuf did. And ultimately, if you can't get that grassroots on side, you're always going to be, in for a bit of a slug out at some point. I think what's happened here, though, in the aftermath of the incident at PMQs and the question, Sarah Potion's question, is what you're seeing here is a bit of a breakdown in communication because messaging is not quite there, because Reform, being a very new party relatively, still does not have what you'd call coherent lines and messages about all strands of policy. Now, to be fair, the conversation around the burqa, that was not at the top of the agenda. That's a bit of a sidelined issue that has suddenly come roaring back, so it's understandable that Reform might not have it sort of front and centre. But I think it does speak to the fragility of the party right now. It's doing very well, but there are still lots of blind spots that people could try to go down and ask different members, different MPs, different councillors, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And they might come up with something that is broadly very popular amongst the voters, amongst the public, but is not necessarily something that everybody in the party hierarchy has signed off on.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps. And I say this with hesitancy because I know lots of people in Reform, of course, but I myself am not in the party as part of their meetings and don't get to be a fly on the wall of what goes on. No. But I wonder if, despite all of his talents and despite the brilliant optics of Zia Yusuf, and he is a talented man and a great presenter, and I don't think he's a bad man at all, but perhaps on some level this might be a bit of a getting rid of a ball and chain around the party's ankle, because there was the Rupert Lowe gate, which certainly, at least the reporting of Rupert Lowe to the police was an action taken by Zia Yusuf, an action that a lot of people thought was pretty horrific. I am of great confidence when I say that I do not believe that this was initiated or even signed off by Nigel. And similarly, I cannot imagine under any circumstances Nigel initiating or signing off the party chairman, calling the newest MP dumb after asking her very first question at PMQs. So perhaps actually this is a moment that Reform could regroup. Perhaps even they might invite Rupert Lowe over for a bottle of claret and a rare steak and be able to sort out their differences.
I mean, stranger things have happened. I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but, never say never. What I would say is there are positives and negatives to this. The positives are, I don't think that this is going to hurt Reform's polling at all. I think we often those of us in the bubble, in politics, who are junkies of this sort of thing, often overstate the importance of even quite large figures in political parties. If it's not the leader, most people, in fact, don't really care, don't know about it. So short of Nigel Farage deciding I'm off, I don't think Zia Yusuf's departure will actually harm Reform's polling in the short term. So that's actually, in some ways, as you say, a net positive. There are lots of people in the party who disliked him, who disliked that whole incident, and will see this as good riddance. But the question then is around how much of a role did he play in the organisational side, in the fundraising side, and I think he would certainly argue that he played a very large part. Others might disagree, but I suppose the proof will be in the pudding. If we see Reform continuing to poll well, going forward apace, putting in place those grassroots, those mechanisms, those structures that allow it to operate at a local level as well as a national level, well, then people will say, well, it's not too big a deal. But if you start to see fraying, a lack of discipline elsewhere, then other people might go, maybe Zia Yusuf was right. Maybe there did need to be a little bit more discipline, a little bit more tightness. So I think it's one of those where, given that Farage has been so sort of complimentary about him, I suspect Farage sees a lot of positives about him, but that doesn't mean that this has to be...
Well, perhaps he also doesn't want to, in the aftermath of leaving the party, because I no longer believe working to get a reformed government elected is a good use of my time. Aren't exactly warm words. Perhaps he's trying to stop any more bombs going off. Benedict, thank you ever so much for your input. We're going to be staying with this story. There's so many messages coming in. I'm going to be reading them. I'm going to be talking more on this shock resignation after this.